Welcome, everyone. This is Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be not having just one Michael, we're going to be having two. And we're going to be having a guest coach come on. He is an endurance athlete coach. And what that basically means is he helps you be the best physical, best mindset you can be when it comes to long-term and long-distance running, athletics, swimming, biking. When someone begins that journey, I will say it's not an easy journey to be an athletic endurance runner. The reason I say that is because if you go on the treadmill right now, let's say you put it for 7 miles, right? You're just trying to run. Maybe it's a little bit high. Maybe you should go 5, but I'm just trying to get that mindset into you as quick as possible. So you hit that 7 on the treadmill. You start running. Maybe 45 seconds in, you go, Jesus. This is difficult. When you get to that 45 seconds, what do? Sometimes people are going to press the stop button. Some people are going to slow down. Some people are crazy enough and say, I'm going to speed up and go a little bit more. But those are going to be few and far between. What I will say is that the mind is going to be panicking. You're going to have all the red flags and the fire alarms and the signals going off, and you're literally huffing and puffing. You think you're going to die, when in reality you're not going to die. You're just going to get stronger. So we do have to overcome some of our beliefs when it comes to fitness, when it comes to what we can do. So I always tell people, when you get on that treadmill and you're running for that first time, I know you're not going to be able to get 10 miles or something along those lines. I'm not looking for 10 miles. I'm just trying to see where you are. Because if you're at 45 seconds and you stop, let's start again. Maybe you get 30 seconds, right? Because your brain is still firing off. This is bad. My heart is racing. I'm going to have a heart attack. You're not. Most likely not. So we begin. That's the training process. Maybe in a week, we do the same test, 7 miles, and we see how long you can go. Now you're doing 1 minute and 15 seconds. What happened right there is we literally helped the mind say, I'm improving. Because sometimes when it comes to regular fitness, like people who are trying to lose some weight, maybe the typical gym route, lifting weights, regular cardio, Stairmaster, elliptical, treadmill, bike, swimming, they might not see the results like this, snap of the fingers. That's why many people stop. They stop around February to April time because they don't get the instant gratification of what is fitness. Fitness is a long-term goal. It's not something that you can just say, okay, I'm going to be 200 pounds lighter or whatever your goal weight is. I'm going to be able to lift this much. I'm going to be able to run this much or swim this much or do this much. Do you expect just to get there and then it's going to maintain? It's something that you have to commit to for a lifetime. And the more you can commit to it, the more you can dedicate to it, the more you're going to see that your life is going to be more fuller with meaning, with energy, with purpose, similar to meaning. The goal is you. The goal is to see how you can be better. How can you grow? What does that look like for you? Today, we're going to be taking you on a journey. We're going to be going for a little run of mindset, a little run of your understanding of fitness and of discipline so you can begin to take action today. So let's get into that interview with Michael Seiler and myself. Welcome, Michael Seiler, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Michael?
Doing well. Thank you so much. It's always great to meet another Michael. It's a great name. And I know we're going to have a great conversation today. We're going to be talking about your work. You are a performance coach, and performance is what performance is. And a lot of people don't have the performance. They don't have the discipline to perform. They don't have the mindset to perform. There's just so much that comes into performance. We're going to get into all that today. Without me talking about your work, because I know performance coaching can be a little bit vague. You do so much more than that. Please tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help them.
My name is Michael Seiler. Run a company called Meta Endurance, along with my business partner, Holly Benner, who's a former professional triathlete. I had been running another coaching company for about 5 or 6 years when Holly, who is my personal coach, and I partnered up and said, hey, she came to me and said, hey, would you ever be interested in partnering with a coach? I said, only if it's you, just because our vibe is very similar. We're both endurance athletes and really have been focused on helping endurance athletes create sustainable performance. And we really take a whole athlete approach, focusing on their mind, their body, and their soul. And what we have found is this approach is, I think, a little unique in the industry. We can't find a real good corollary to what we're doing. But what we have seen just time and again is you've got athletes who come to you looking for help with, say, I'm going to do an Ironman triathlon, or I want to run a marathon. But then as you get into it, you realize that there's some mindset work you need to do with them. That whole other thing we call life, that we need to help them balance that on how do they manage a busy work schedule or family schedule along with the demands of whatever they're training for. And so that's really where we've developed this framework for helping hit on those three, mind, body, and soul, to really work with the whole athlete. We chose the name Meta because it's a Pali word, which means loving kindness. And we firmly believe that loving kindness starts with yourself and giving yourself some grace, doing the things to take care of yourself, whether it's focusing on sleep or nutrition or your family in that moment, so that you can be the best you on any given day.
So let's go back to your history, right? You said you were an endurance athlete. What got you into that type of sport? Was it something you did in high school, or was it something you fell in love with as you were growing up and maybe you were in a career, like maybe corporate, and you say, you know what, I'm going to do some Ironman, some 5Ks, and you fell in love with it?
That's a great question. When my sisters listen to this, they will laugh about it. So I grew up playing soccer. I started playing soccer when I was about 7 and played through college. I was an all-conference goalkeeper in college, played a little bit after that. And I remember to the day I think I was in college, may have been after, I made this declaration of, I'm going to run a marathon. And my family is super competitive. My sister ran track at Auburn. My younger sister's super competitive. So they said, noted. And I never heard the end of it until I ran one. And something about that just clicked with me. And one marathon became 2 marathons, became somewhere in the neighborhood of 37, 38. I had been riding bikes and racing bikes. And so you start to string those together and add swimming, you're doing triathlons. And then now, primarily, I focus on endurance gravel events. So I'm cycling, as well as still running half marathons and marathons. But it's just something in the process and the how do you manage an effort over a long distance really just appealed to me. So it was something I wasn't born into. It's something I developed over time.
You would say that it's different because it's a different mindset than playing soccer. You're running up and down the field. I know you were the goalkeeper, you said. So maybe not as much running for you, but still important job, right? You stop those opponents from getting those goals that they don't need, right? You need to win. You need to make sure that you protect the goal. When you were there, you might have did training, like just regular training with the team, running, sprints, all those things, but it's different than running a 100-mile race, right? Or something along those lines, right? When when we get into that mindset, I often think of like the man David Goggins, and he has that mindset of like doing these races and doing these crazy things where it's just like, even though he is a guy who goes to the gym and he does a lot of pull-ups and incline press, he loves to run, and like he runs a lot, like 8 miles, I think is his like the shortest he runs a week. He runs, I think, multiple times a week. I want to say 5 to 7 days. I think he does something every single day, but he has that mindset. Would you say your mindset is similar to David Goggins, or is it a little bit different?
There's definitely some similarities for me personally, and I know in listening to your podcast, I know for you going to the gym 5 days a week is important to you. It's part of who you are. I'm very similar. I need to do some form of movement every day. I generally work out 6 days a week. On that seventh day, I'm still doing something like going for a walk or doing some mobility work. But I need that for me to feel at my best. I think the big difference for me is, Goggins tends to be a little bit of the go hard or go home, which works for some people. There's sometimes you need to hear that message is, here's a time you need to suck it up. But I think his point is you need to challenge yourself and continually push your limits and to do things that are hard for you, because you're going to learn from that. Your body's going to grow from that. Your mind's going to grow from that. Even if you fail, you're going to learn something and you can adjust and try again or try something differently. In that respect, I think we're similar.
Well, I asked a question because it's important for people to understand you have two extremes, right? David is definitely on the very extreme level where he will do some crazy stuff, run in the rain. He will run, blistering cold. He doesn't care. When some people are like, well, it's cold out. Let me go to the gym, run on the treadmill, something along those lines, where people have different levels of comfort or different levels of determination. So when you work with individuals who are looking at building their endurance levels, their, times and things like that, when it comes to endurance fitness, what's the approach? Is it more of let's see where you are or let's see how much you can do?
So when I start working with an athlete, we start where they are. If it's they can barely run down the block, that's where we start. If they can, if they've got a good base, running 3 or 4 days a week, we start there. And we continue to build with the goal of, there's a phrase that the writer Steve Magnus uses of providing just manageable challenges. So something that's just outside of their reach to give them that nudge, to push them a little bit more. And then as we continue to work together, I will put workouts on their calendar that I'm pretty sure they're going to fail. And what's interesting is most of the time, 85, 90% of the time, and they've actually pushed themselves harder than they thought they would. And so now we've got a new marker. We just move the yardstick out a little further. So we keep just these just manageable so that they are pushing themselves without the potential downfall or negativity that comes with failing it. Because then we got to start to deal with their how they perceive failure, how they deal with failure. But it's really about just those just manageable workouts that give them something to stretch for.
I want to get into runner's high, but before I do that, I want to talk about the aspect of mindset. So, as you say, you give them something so challenging, just out of their reach, and maybe you're expecting them to stop, not be able to complete it in the time that you want it to be done. Great example is going to be just a basic example. It's not really endurance, but let's say someone's trying to run 5 miles, right? So they're running and let's say they get 4 miles in, they stop. They're like, I'm gassed out. Do you find it's more difficult to start back up when you stop rather than just getting it done?
It's a good question. Personally, I find it a little bit easier to get it done, to just push through. But I got there through a bunch of sets and reps over my training period. And however, someone gets to 4 miles and they're just gassed. There's nothing they can do. Well, we learned something that day. And it says, okay, we need to go back to the drawing board. What happened? Was there some cause for it? Nutritional issue? You changed the way you worked out, time you worked out, you had a really stressful day? Or is it just a training thing and we're just not there yet and need to just continue to build, and then we'll try another 5 mile run later to test to see where we are?
Yeah, that's important to understand, I find, because when it comes to like running and me doing things, if I stop, it's just like I give my brain a green light. Hey, it's okay to stop. It's okay to take it easy. And I find that like when you're training, like especially running, cardio, it's like the moment you give that pass, that hall pass, whatever you want to call it, it's like a battle. And I know like sometimes you can be running and you just feel like I'm going to stop. I'm going to press the stop button on the treadmill. I'm going to stop on the track, whatever it be. And you're just like, no, I'm going to push through it. And you push through it sometimes. And then you're like, oh, I'm glad I pushed through it, because then eventually we get into that runner's high. It's not so bad. It's a runner high more of a balance in the body, and the body just becomes acclimated. It says, okay, this is my rhythm. Or is it more of the mind finally calmed down? We started to get our senses back. We're no longer in the sense of fight or flight. And it's like, okay, now we can be logical again. Like, what's your take on that aspect?
Awesome question. I do think that runner's high comes from, I mean, there's some chemical things that are going on that give you that positive, what we know as the runner's high. But I like the way you described it. It is your body, your mind kind of settling into the rhythm and feeling comfortable. It's interesting. Something I started experimenting with, and I've now got at least my athletes who do run, is what most people do is they step out the door and they just take off running. And immediately their heart rate spikes and you do get that stress response in your body. It's like, oh, what the heck is going on? What is going on? And it goes, straight to sympathetic response. And often that either, because they went out too fast, their brain reacted to the fact that their heart rate shot up really quickly. So one of the things I've been really getting my athletes to do, and I do this on every run, is I walk the first 2 to 3 minutes of my run. The point being is it creates a signal to my brain and my body to say, we're getting ready to go to work. Start getting ready, start warming up, start getting the fuel going, the engine running. And so when I then start to run, I don't immediately go to that sympathetic response. And it does just I'm starting at a settled place right out of the gate versus having to calm myself down, I've found that it gets me to that settled state that you called it right away. Even when I'm running intervals, even if the workout includes intervals, I'm still doing that because it just allows me to ease in to get ready for the work at hand.
Indeed, do some stretches before that 2 minutes or 3 minutes of walking, or is it more of I'm going to get my stretch in that 2 or 3 minutes?
I will not a fan of static stretching. So I want something that's really at what I would call mobility. So movement based, and part of that is in the walk, is doing a very brisk walk. It's starting to loosen things up, move it around. If you want to insert some mobility while you're doing that, even better. I spend more time on the mobility post activity, whether it's biking, running, lifting, because that's where you're really going to start to get the recovery and get those muscles loose post run or post bike.
When a person is, living, maybe they have a corporate America job, they give themselves these goals, these aspirations. And one of those goals is I'm going to do a 5K. I'm going to do some type of run, right? Maybe it's a Spartan man race, a Tough Mudder, whatever the race is. They give themselves a goal. Sometimes they just kind of do it for fun with their friends and they don't care about timing. Sometimes they truly train hard and say, I really want to be number one, or I want to be the top 10, or whatever the goal placement they gave themselves. If someone was just a corporate America person, maybe they don't do much fitness work, maybe go to gym 3 times a week, activity levels light at best. Where would they begin? I know they're not endurance athletes, but they want to be endurance athletes. They want to do an activity that is an endurance activity. Where do they begin?
I hope this doesn't sound like a cop out, but we have to start with where they are. I would sit down with the athlete and understand what they're doing, what their demands in their life are. Find out really one of the questions I have on our intake questionnaire when we bring on a new athlete and have what we call a discovery call is I want to know what their why is. Why do they want to do this? Why is this important to them? What will it mean to them to complete this? Because that really helps me understand their psyche as they're going into. It also gives me a sense of how hard they're willing to work for this goal. It also helps me understand, are they someone that's going to trust the process, put in that work? Because really completing something is a point in time. And what I want to be able to do is help someone develop good habits, sustainable habits that will see them through beyond that Tough Mudder, Spartan race, half marathon. I've just seen too many people that say, I want to run a half marathon. They do all the training, check the box, and then they go back to their old habits. And I think a lot of it is they weren't doing anything and they just went, did this thing and didn't really understand why they were doing it, why it was important, because that's going to be the thing that drives them longer term.
It's more than just a trend or something they want to get off their bucket list. It's a lifestyle that they have to adapt.
Yes.
Yeah, it's important that I think they understand that at least. because especially around New Year's time, I mean, that's when the clients spike for me. It's like everyone's like, "Hey, I want to get a better life and I want to do this." And January is right next to February, and February is Valentine's. So people are trying to find someone to snuggle up with. And it's just like everyone's trying to do so much. And they fill their plate and they give themselves all of these ideas and goals, and they're great to have those things, but they don't have a lot of implementation and action toward them, right? They might have got a trainer at the gym or a gym membership and they go for a little bit, but they fall off. When you're working with someone who's saying, okay, I want to do this endurance, I have my why. How do you keep them on the horse? How do you keep them hungry each and every day to make progress, to reach the goal of maybe 5 mile, 10 mile, whatever they're going for?
There's a couple of tools that I like to use. I think one, just what's unique about our company, Meta Endurance, is that we truly feel we're coaching. A lot of people, you'll go and someone will give you a training plan and that's it, versus being there for them to communicate with me. Hey, I'm having a crappy day. I'm there for you. We can talk about it. Maybe we need to make an adjustment to your training today to address a long day at work. Or there's that conversation and communication that we have found keeps people motivated. And part of the role as a coach, and I'm sure you see this with your clients, is they're hiring you a little bit for accountability because they know the Michaels are going to be looking at how they're performing on their training plan, and I don't want to disappoint them. So that's one tool, is just being there for them, being that advocate, their partner, to support them, to sometimes say, hey, got to crack the whip here a little bit if needed. The other is providing them with the data. So we use a program called Training Peaks, and we can do charts and graphs, actually show them their progress. So you get an athlete that's just not seeing, doesn't feel like they're making any gains. I can pull up a chart and show them. I had a client like this who didn't feel like they had improved their running speed at all. And I just created a chart using the software we use that showed, hey, at a given heart rate over the past 2 months, you've trimmed 30 seconds per mile off your time. And they're like, oh, okay, I get it. So it gave them that data reinforcement to say, I am making progress. I can see it. And then I think giving them those challenges, those, what I mentioned, those just manageable challenges in their training, where they say, it's like in the gym, you keep upping the weight, and sometimes you fail, but then you continue to add it, and then the next time you get that lift, or you get set a new PR. Those are those little markers that give you that carrot to keep going.
Yeah, like when we're in the gym and we have like our notebooks, we can see what we had on day one. Maybe we're at the 10-pound dumbbells, and then month 11 or something, we're doing 45s.
Right.
On day one, you're not going to be like, oh man, 45s are something I want. But then it's like, I don't think that's the best choice for you, because you have to start where you are sometimes. But then you do have to understand that the 45s are possible, right? So you can show that, hey, I can do it. You can have other people in the gym say, look, he can do it. It is possible. The reason I say this is because you probably know the man very well, Roger Bannister, 4 minute mile, the first guy to do it. And, the scientists said that this can't be done. The friends, I'm sure family members say, don't do this, like you're going to die. And he's like, I'm still going to do it, right? When you have something that has never been done before, maybe finishing a race in a certain amount of time, trying to break a record, is that a different mindset than just saying, all right, we're going to just train where you are? Because if we just train where you are and we look at the limits imbued by the world and society, the 4 minute mile might have never happened. It took someone who was crazy enough to say, that's not my limit. What's your take on training beyond what is appropriate or what has been done before?
So there's a great book by Matt Fitzgerald called How Bad Do You Want It? And in it, he goes through all the science of what are our limits as humans. The TLDR version of that is we can do a lot more than we think we can. And the reason most of us don't, or we stop ourselves short of that, is it's what's going on between the ears. I define mindset as the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. And if you're constantly telling yourself, oh, I could never run a 4-minute mile, guess what? You're probably right. So it definitely is a mindset in there. There's maybe it's crazy, or maybe it's just a belief, a self-confidence maybe, that differentiates people. A Roger Bannister from just ignoring everything around him and all the scientists and everything and saying, I understand that, but I have enough confidence in myself to believe that I can do that. What's interesting about a story about Roger Bannister is a lot of these people that do break records, it's not like they just hopped off the couch and went and did this. So they had a track record of saying, I've continued to get faster, I continue to train and make improvements. So they were getting that reinforcement that helped set that mindset and gave them the evidence that this is achievable for me. You look at I forget what they called it, but the Nike project where they wanted to run the sub 2-hour marathon. These runners said, I've run at this pace, and I know that if I've got a car draft, I can draft behind, I've got pacers, that's going to be the edge I need to get under 2 hours. But it starts with the mindset, what's going on and what story you're telling yourself.
When you're working with these individuals, these endurance athletes, which is more important in the beginning, time or endurance?
I would say time. When I first started running, I focused on miles, like how many miles did I run today? And I just started switching, and now I really focus more on how much time you're spending running. It's just a better gauge of, like, I can go out and run for 2 hours, depending on the pace. That could be 13, 15 miles, could be 10 or 11, just depending on that. But I tend to prescribe a time versus a mileage.
That's important for people to realize, because I think sometimes people can get so warped about, oh, I can't do it in 4 minutes, I can't do it in 5 minutes, or they're trying to do, a 7-minute mile at least on the treadmill just beginning, and they're so focused on the time. Yet sometimes we can look at the endurance aspect, especially when it comes to mindset. It's like, listen, you remember last week when you could only run a quarter of a mile? You're running half a mile without stopping, right? So we go from there and then we build from there. So it's interesting that, well, these are different athletes too. It's like, these are the endurance athletes. They're focused on the time. So they probably already have the health. They probably have some of the mindset, and you're just there to bring them to the next level, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, like all that makes sense then. Time can be important. If someone's a beginner, maybe endurance. I mean, but then again, time can be a critical factor in mindset too, saying, okay, I got to get this time. I got to get this time. Even when I ran in high school, I mean, it was all about endurance. It's like, all right, I want to do 4 laps. I want to do this many laps. It wasn't so much of the time until college where I said, okay, I want to do this in this amount of time. And the only reason I did it was because of competition. So me and my cousin would go to the gym together, and we're like, all right, let's see who could do this the quickest. So we were literally dying on the treadmill trying to beat each other. So it's so important to have some good people in your life, some good competition. And that is what we need as individuals. We need people sometimes to hold us accountable, as you said, to push us and to teach us, because you have already done so many different things in your life from your own athletic career. Now you can imbue that into other people who might be younger, who might be starting off, and then they can begin that journey. As we begin to wrap up, I would love to get some final words from you, and then to please tell the audience where they can find you.
Yeah, I think from final words, it really is important. And I think in the coaching industry, we find there's a lot of hesitance for people to hire a coach. And we're really there to help them, to be their partner, to help them achieve whatever the goals they have for themselves. And whether it's accountability that they want, whether it's helping them manage all that's going on in their life to help them achieve that goal, that's where a coach provides value. You look at Roger Federer, he has a coach. He's had a coach all his life. Even as he's reached the top of his sport, still has a coach. it becomes that person that can offer that feedback, the support, cracking the whip when you need to. And I think it doesn't matter what level athlete you are, and whether it's I want to be a 5K runner, I want to run a half marathon, I want to bike across America. Coach can really help you achieve those goals. Finding us, you can find us on Instagram at Meta Endurance. You'll find us on Facebook on Meta Endurance. If you want to personally find me, I'm on Instagram at bike.zen, bike.zen. Do a lot of crossover posting there. But you can also find us at www.metaendurance.com.
And you're right. We need a coach. I know it's an investment. I know it's something that people think, oh, I can try to do it by myself. And you definitely can try. You might be able to succeed, right? I'm not saying that it's impossible. It's just that it becomes even more possible when you have a coach. Leverage that. The greatest. Michael Jordan had Tim Grover. He had, of course, his basketball coach. LeBron James has his coaches. We look at sports, Olympics, whether it's, gymnastics, swimming, Michael Phelps, they all have coaches. Yes, they're amazing, right? You probably say, oh my God, I can never do that. But if you have the right coach that can guide you, that can say, okay, we need to rest, we need to push, we need to rest, we need to do this, and you listen, amazing things will happen. And it's like something you have to experience, because it was something that I had to experience when I first got my coach, my mentor. It's like you think you know, but then when you finally get a coach, then he's like, oh, this is like a cheat code. So if you're ready to take it to the next level, if you're ready to begin truly living, a coach is going to set you so far ahead, and you're going to say, why have I been waiting? All the links are going to be in the description box below. Check out Michael. He's going to be waiting for you so you can begin your endurance athletic career. And if you are an endurance athlete, he's going to take you to the next level. I want to thank you so much, Michael, for coming on, spending some time with us, and talking about the work that you do. All right, everyone. I'd like to thank you so much for watching that interview with Michael Seiler and myself. What went on was we talked a little bit about his business. We talked about why he began, but then we put a heavy emphasis on where do you begin? What are the aspects of mindset? What's going on in your mind? Things that you should focus on. And the reason why I brought the interview in that direction today was because recently I was talking to someone older. They're getting ready to retire. He was telling me about his kids, and they're just graduating college. And I was like, okay, they have their whole life ahead. They're doing good. He was talking about regret. He said he wanted to live life with as little or no regret as possible. So he was doing things that maybe his wife didn't want, or maybe people would have said, like, really, you're doing that? Sometimes a 5K, an Ironman, a Spartan race, whatever it be, becoming an endurance athlete, it can be on the list. But maybe you're not in the best physical shape right now. Maybe you don't have the mindset. Maybe you don't have the discipline. And it's going to take a lot of work. I often say that most people are not going to take action unless they have a trauma in their life. They have a moment where they say, you know what, this is my wake-up call. I have to do this. But today can be that call to action. Today can be the day that you say, I'm going to run that 4-minute mile. Today is going to be the day that I'm going to do a group race, or I'm going to do a triathlon. Whatever your goal is, just commit to it. Easier said than done, Michael, right? Because you can commit to something. You could write it down. You can say, this is going to be my New Year's resolution. But then you find that you didn't do it, and the next year becomes more difficult. The next time you start, it becomes more difficult, because we have not given ourselves the purpose, the why. And one of the things Michael does, he says it. We focus on the why because it is a lifelong type of commitment. It is something that is not just, all right, I'm going to do keto for 30 days and then I'm going to lose all this weight. This is not that. This is something, if you want to change your whole entire life, better cardio fitness or cardiovascular, right? Being able to do more, running after your children. If you're older, I think it's called osteoporosis or something along those lines, stopping that from kicking in, getting moving, meeting people, learning how you can have a life of fitness, but it can be fun also. We talked about many different things. We talked about this, but we alluded to it more so than that, was the aspect of competition, where you can be in competition with someone and they can help elevate you. But maybe you're doing this for you, right? Sometimes people, they just want to be an endurance athlete. They want to run a 5K or 10K or whatever it is. And they just want to do it because it's a bucket list thing. Or maybe they do that and then they say, okay, what's the next level? What's the next level? And then they keep going. And then maybe they form the habit. They have the discipline already. And they say, this is my lifestyle. But you do have to commit to it. You do have to say, this is something that I want. This is not, again, your fad diets. This, again, is not your momentary New Year's resolution. This is something you have to commit to if you want it. So the people who are trying to make a difference in their life and they're trying to do an overhaul on their fitness, their mindset, endurance is going to be exactly what it says. It helps you endure not only running, the pain, but understanding that sometimes we are wired for comfort. And sometimes when you're running, you might not be comfortable. You might not feel like running. You might not want to run in the rain. You know, some people feel the rain, some people get wet. Which one are you, right? Are you the person who just gets wet and you're like, oh, Jesus, I'm soaked? Or you can say, I feel this rain. This rain feels cold, maybe warm if it's summer and humid. What does that feel like for you? What I can tell you is that if you can start to live life that way, you start to live more in the present moment because you're not thinking about, most likely, if you're on a run, you might be thinking about it, but maybe not, probably not. You're going to be focused on that run, on your breath, on your control, on your time, on your heartbeat, drinking, whatever you got to do. You're not going to be like, oh man, after this run, I got to go pay some bills, or after this run, I got to go, fire some people, or whatever you have on your mind. Typically, when it comes to fitness and you're really into it, like truly into it, like when I'm lifting heavy weight, I'm not like, like I'm lifting heavy weight. Oh man, like after this, I have to go grocery shopping. It's literally like, I need to lift this weight up. We start to focus on the now. We start to focus on the present. And when we do that, that is where happiness and joy reside, in that moment. Happiness is not a delayed moment. It's always the moment that you're in. And if you can't learn that, try to run a mile. Try to do a Spartan race. And you're going to start to appreciate things so much more. Maybe you appreciate your bed when you get home, a nice hot shower after a tough mutter, and you're like, I can appreciate this so much more. And that is where the joys of life truly become embellished. Because if we just go through our days naturally and there's no change, things get boring. You need to spice it up a little bit. How can we spice it up? Challenge yourself every single day. Make sure you can push yourself, do things that might have never been done before, and then start to challenge people. And the challenge doesn't have to be, I'm going to beat you in this race. I'm going to get first place. You have the friendly, competitive nature of, all right, this is my rival. We are both aiming for the first spot. Let's see who gets it. It can be a team effort. It could be a solo ditch effort. Whichever one you choose, surround yourself with those people. And I always say, surround yourself with the people you want to be or become. So surround yourself with runners, surround yourself with coaches who can help you become better runners. And you're going to see that you're going to start to make some changes. It might seem like, oh, endurance is a different type of coaching, it's a different type of fitness, but it does something different to the mindset. It truly does. If you can learn how to persist, you can learn how to win. Many people give up on the onset of failure, but you do have to be confident. You have to be resilient. Endurance is resilience. Learn how to be resilient. Learn how to endure the pain, endure the hardship, endure until you get the mindset that is omnipotent, a mindset that is going to take you to levels that you might have never thought that you can ever be before. That is going to be maybe the start of your whole entire life. But in order for you to do that, you have to begin, you have to get there. So again, Everyone check out Michael. Check us out at revenconcepts.com. Get yourself some coaching. It is going to be the most important thing you can do for yourself in the rest of this year and then the beginning of 2024, because you want to start. You don't want to wait until January 1st and say, okay, I'm going to begin, because you have to do that warm up. Just like Michael said, 2 to 3 minutes for beginning that warm up. And it might be 2 to 3 months before you truly start to get the mindset. You start to see the progress, and then you start to attain the things that you have for yourself in your mind. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, you can email me coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I'll see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone take care.